Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Nicholas Ameta, Chair of this statutory public meeting. Please note that the City of Cambridge Council budget and statutory public meetings are broadcasted on the city's YouTube page and archived on the city's website. On that note, our last council meeting had 306 views on YouTube and 6 registered delegations. So we're quite happy about the public interest. We do have rules of engagement at council and committee meetings. I ask that you be respectful while others are speaking, refrain from any demonstrations, and I encourage you to actively listen to others. We have one statutory public meeting under the Ontario Planning Act. Before I begin, I would like to provide you with a safety notice for those of you with us in council chambers. In the event of emergency, please evacuate the council chambers using the nearest exit staircase. If you require assistance, please see our clerk staff. I ask that you please gather outside of City Hall in the Farmers Market parking lot and await further instructions. It is my pleasure to introduce Council. Councillor Reid, Councillor Kempson, Councillor Devine, Councillor Earnshaw, Councillor Roberts, Councillor Hamilton, Councillor Cooper. Mayor Liggett is currently at the region at one of the meetings there, and she may not be able to make it. So she did send regrets just in case, but if the meeting finishes soon, then she might be here. So we'll see. We do have staff with us attending the meeting, and they will come up as our items are introduced. A special thank you to our clerks and technology services staff who are assisting with the logistics of the meeting. Indigenous territory acknowledgement. We embrace our shared responsibility with the Indigenous peoples to take care of this earth and its creatures. We can only do so by walking the path as partners, stewarding this land, as we have been given the duty together to live in balance and harmony with all living things. We acknowledge and respect the Indigenous peoples who came before us and who we live amongst. By honoring this truth of past and present, may we come to true reconciliation through listening, reflecting, and learning. A reminder to members of council that the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act requires members of council to declare any direct or indirect pecuniary interest in relation to a matter under consideration. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, as mentioned, we have one statutory public meeting under the Ontario Planning Act. I will call upon staff to provide an introductory presentation at the beginning of the statutory public meeting and allow for consultant presentations. Afterwards, I will call for pre-registered delegations and then open the floor to any members of our in-person and virtual audience that wish to speak to an item. Members of our virtual audience wishing to speak to the item before us may contact us at clerks@cambridge.ca or by sending a text message to phone number 226-218-1184. For ease of reference, the phone number and email are displayed on the screen for everyone watching from home and in the gallery. City staff are on hand to monitor this number and email address during the course of the statutory public meeting. Please note that the number is also available on the addendum for this meeting, which has been posted on our council calendar. To accommodate anyone requesting to speak from home, council will take a short recess after the public call out to allow for callers. And each delegate who participates virtually or in person will be allowed 5 minutes to speak. I also remind council that the statutory public meeting item will be before council a second time with the recommendation report. Today's process is for public consultation. Council will consider all oral and written comments prior to making a decision on a planning application. If a member of the public would like to be informed of further reports and/or decisions on this matter, we ask that you please email your name and contact information to our planning division. The contact information for the staff member associated with the public meeting will be shared as part of their presentation. And the only statutory public meeting on the agenda is agenda number 5.1, report 23-193, CD public meeting part of 1065 Speedsville Road, zoning bylaw amendment, River Mill Development Corp. We'll hear from staff, consultants, and move to pre-registered delegations, followed by anyone else who wishes to speak to this item. We will begin with a presentation from Rachel Green, Senior Planner. Welcome, Rachel.
Good evening to the chair, councillors, and staff joining us this evening, as well as any public that may be watching virtually. Just going to wait for my slides to come up. All right, so tonight we are here to provide an introduction for the zoning bylaw amendment for part of 1065 Speedsville Road, file RO123. Next slide, please. Staff note that no decisions will be made on this application this evening. Notice was mailed to nearby property owners and anyone else requesting notification, as well as being published in the Cambridge Times on March 2nd. Above is the planning process timeline. Today we are at a public meeting in order to get feedback on the proposal from council and the public. Staff and agencies have been circulated and will continue to review the application. Once all comments have been addressed, staff will bring forward a recommendation to a future council meeting, and there may be changes to the proposal between now and the final report. Anyone who would like to receive future notifications regarding this application is encouraged to register for the mailing list, and my email is located on the top corner of each slide. Next slide, please. The subject lands are located at the southeast corner of Equestrian Way and Speedsville Road. It is located in phase 3 of the draft approved River Mill subdivision, formerly known as Hunt Club. Once the block is registered, the lot area will be 2.33 hectares with a frontage of 175 meters on Equestrian Way and 109 meters on Speedsville Road. The lands are currently designated as greenfield area and high density residential with an existing site specific policy outlined in the official plan as the Hunt Club Estates Main Street, intended for the development of a mixed use area that primarily serves the local neighborhood. The lands are currently zoned HRM3 CS5 with a site specific, which permits both residential and commercial uses subject to a holding provision. The site is currently vacant and is subject to a servicing easement, and the lands are primarily surrounded by previous and future phases of the River Mill subdivision in various stages. Some are under construction, some are still under site plan review. There's an employment block located to the south, and existing low-density residential is located to the west of Speedsville Road. Next slide, please. So the proposed development is a 4-story apartment building with a total of 465 dwelling units. There are 465 parking spaces proposed within the partially underground structure, as well as 70 surface spaces, which are intended to be reserved for visitors located internal to the site, as well as 152 bike parking spaces. The site is proposed to have 2 driveway accesses from Equestrian Way, one that goes directly into the parking structure and the other providing access internal to the site. And there is common indoor and outdoor amenity area proposed, as well as private balconies. Next slide, please. So here are some renderings of the concept. The first is the proposed apartment from the corner of Equestrian Way and Speedsville. And the second is in view internal to the site, showing the lobby entrance and surface parking. Next slide, please. These renderings show the elevations. The first slide is the elevation of the building from Equestrian Way, and the second is the elevation from Speedsville Road. And you can see that there is a grade change from the north to the south of the site. Next slide, please. So the proposed development requires a zoning bylaw amendment application to modify the existing site-specific provisions on the site. The proposal does conform to the height and density provisions of the official plan, and therefore an OPA is not required for this particular application. Staff do note that the current development concept being proposed is for an apartment building. However, the applicant is also requesting modifications for townhouses to provide flexibility in case a townhouse development proceeds instead of an apartment without the need to return to council for approvals. So there's a lot of site-specific provisions to go through, so I will try to summarize the best that I can. So the first is The applicant is requesting relief from providing commercial uses on the subject lands and instead compensate this floor area and other mixed-use blocks in the River Mill community. And this, the amount of commercial to be provided in the development has been provided in a market impact study that is being reviewed by staff. The applicant is proposing an increase in density on the site. Currently, townhouses are permitted to a maximum of 40 units per hectare and apartments to 75 units per hectare, where the applicant is requesting an increase for cluster and back-to-back towns for 75 units per hectare and 200 units per hectare for stacked towns and apartments. Essentially, this results in 175 towns potentially being permitted on site, or 465 apartment units, or 465 units in stacked townhouses. The applicant is looking to amend the height, particularly the way that the height is calculated. So the current bylaw limits the height to 13.5 meters, which is approximately equivalent to 4 stories. And so based on the grading on the site, the applicant is looking to calculate the 4 stories based on the grading along Equestrian Way in order to provide a standard height across the site to calculate from. And this is also excluding the rooftop equipment, which is contemplated in the parent bylaw already. Next slide, please. The applicant is also requesting a reduction in private amenity area. Cluster townhouses would still be required to provide 25 square meters per unit as a rear yard, where 35 square meters is currently required. And back-to-back stacked townhouses and apartments would be required to provide 4 square meters as balconies and porches. In addition to this private amenity area, the apartment does include shared indoor and outdoor amenity space, which is not included in this calculation. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, not next slide. Sorry. If you could just go, yeah. So the next provision they're looking for is lot coverage, and this would only apply to a townhouse development to increase the lot coverage to 60% for linear and cluster townhouses and 80% for back-to-back and stacked towns. This would not apply to the proposed apartment, which is proposing 49% open landscaping. And then the landscaping provision is only applying to townhouses, and they're looking for a reduction from 30% to 25%. Ground floor area or gross floor area per unit, they're looking for a reduction to 43 square meters. Staff note that any reduction to the GFA will also have to meet the minimum set out in the Ontario Building Code. The applicant is also looking to propose a parking reduction from 0, and that's only to the visitor parking, from 0.25 spaces per unit to 0.15 spaces per unit. This results in a difference of 46 spaces. The applicant is also looking to reduce the setback from parking to a habitable room from 6 meters to 3 meters. And this is a standard that's being proposed in our new comprehensive zoning bylaw. Next slide, please. The applicant's also requesting to increase the minimum setback to Speedsville Road from 4.5 meters to 7 meters and increase the maximum setback from 1.5 meters to 7.25 meters along Equestrian Way. The applicant's also looking to increase maximum encroachments. This would apply to porches, patios, decks, balconies, and eaves into specified yards. The balcony provision in particular will facilitate the proposed apartment building. And geodetic elevation, currently no habitable floor space is permitted above 322 meters above sea level. The applicant is proposing to increase this to 340 meters. This is kind of a unique provision to this site that was implemented because of the noise levels from the Ariscraft facility. So the applicants have submitted an updated information from their noise consultants to confirm that the noise levels can still be maintained at the proposed levels. The applicant is also looking to apply the zoning to the law as a whole, regardless of future lot lines created by a potential plan of condominium. And that would just make sure that the provisions being requested tonight continue to apply, even if a plan of condo is submitted. And lastly, the applicant is requesting to remove the holding provision for the completed record of site condition and noise study, which have both been completed to date. Next slide, please. As staff and agencies continue to review the application, the following considerations include, but are not limited to, consistency and conformity to provincial, regional, and local planning policy, compatibility with the surrounding existing development, transportation and parking, comments received from council, the public, as well as staff and agency circulation. And today, staff recommend that the report be received and that the application be referred back to staff for a future recommendation. Next slide, please. Again, I'd like to remind anyone viewing tonight, if they would like to be put on the mailing list, to reach out to myself at the email listed above. Thanks very much.
Well, thank you, Rachel. I would like to welcome Diana Morris, Terry Johns from T. Johns Consulting Group, who provide us with a presentation. Welcome, Diana and Terry.
Always have to do this. Thank you. Good evening, committee chair, committee members, staff, and those in the public that are listening. My name is Terry Johns. I'm the owner and principal planner of T. Johns Consulting. With me this evening, I have Diana Morris, our senior planner, who's responsible for the day-to-day planning on this project. I want to take a moment to say how nice it is to be here in person. It has been over, I was just calculating it. It's actually been close to 4 years since I've been in this room. Zoom did us well during COVID, and Cambridge did well to get everything moving and approved, but I'm really happy to be here. Thank you, Ms. Green, for your presentation. Diana and I are going to try not to repeat, to simply add some additional information. Next slide, please. Tonight, we're here representing River Mill Development Corporation. This is a developer group made up of 3 family-owned generational developers and builders: Starwood Homes, Mars Homes, and New Horizon Development. Next slide. Before we get into the details, I'd like to take a moment to elaborate how this parcel fits into the entire River Mill neighborhood for those that aren't that familiar with it. As background, the partner, Starwood Homes, has a deep-rooted family connection to this area and owned most of the original Hunt Club lands since the early 90s. That was about 300 acres. Starwood, along with their partners, worked closely over the last decades with the city and the region to obtain approvals to allow what is known today as River Mill. Looking on the right-hand side of the slide, phases 1 and 2 of River Mill, shown in light yellow, are built. Within these phases, there are 2 parks and a school site. The first park in the northern section at the intersection of Compass and Pointer measures about 3.3 acres, and the second larger park in the southern area across from the school block, beside the school block rather, measures about 6.3 acres. Our client, in addition to developing, has built 3 townhouse blocks within phases 1 and 2. Bloom, up at the corner of Compass and Maple Grove, Parkview, across from the school and park, and finally Brooklyn Heights on the north side of Equestrian Way. These townhouses were 2 and 3 stories, as well as back-to-backs. Applications for the lands to the north, known as 4 and 5 on the plan, are currently being processed by the city. The proposed uses are for low, medium, and high-density residential, open space, a stormwater block, and an elementary school. And we hope that we see you shortly on those applications. Phase 6, shown in purple, directly south of the subject lands, is vacant employment block. Our client is currently working towards a site plan for submission on that. The parcel that we're discussing this evening, as noted by Rachel, is within phase 3. Parts of phase 3 are under construction or pending approvals. These consist of townhouses, back-to-back, work-live units, as well as some retail. The zoning bylaw application before you this evening focuses on the 1 block within the overall community. Ms. Green provided you with an overview of the application. I'd like to reemphasize The application is in keeping with your official plan. An apartment is permitted at a height of 4 stories. Now that our client has a specific proposal, the purpose of the zoning application is to fine-tune the zoning that dates back almost 10 years. Next slide, please. And just quickly, in terms of community context, the left slide shows that River Mill is surrounded by residential, employment, Speed River, and agricultural. In terms of River Mill itself, as I've noted, it provides low, medium density residential, parks, school, and stormwater ponds. This proposed apartment development will contribute to expanding the range of housing types, in turn furthering River Mill's success as a complete community. In our opinion, what makes River Mill special is the open space system. In addition to the 2 parks that I mentioned earlier that totaled about 10 acres, there's an existing trail system with a length of 4.7 kilometers, as well as 1.7 kilometers of bike trails. Overall, 1/3 of the original 300 acres has been developed for school, park, open space, and ponds. Over $2 million was invested by our client on park and trail improvements. The applications for 4 and 5 intend to expand upon that trail system. Our clients are very proud of River Mill. It is a successful, complete community and an asset to Cambridge. We continue to work towards its full completion and build out. It's now my pleasure to turn over the mic to Diana.
Thank you, Terry, and good evening. Next slide, please. The slide shown on the screen illustrates the conceptual site plan that accompanies the proposed zoning bylaw. The proposed high-density residential development is located on a vacant block in a draft-approved plan of subdivision. The proposal is for an apartment building, which is a permitted use under the current zone. The building would contain a total of 465 dwelling units, ranging in size from studio to 2-bedroom dwelling units, catering to singles, young couples, and first-time buyers. Proposal consists of 2 4-story buildings connected by a 1-story podium containing a lobby along the southerly lot line. The proposed includes 2 vehicular access driveways with continuous sidewalk connections throughout, and the central main access driveway will align with the access to the future mixed-use building on the north side of Equestrian Way. The subject lands can accommodate all parking needs within the site with 535 parking spaces, including underground resident parking and ground level visitor parking that is screened from the public realm with appropriate building orientation. The proposed building will activate a highly visible parcel for social interaction and establish a sense of place supported with ground floor patios, street plantings, and robust landscaping. The landscaped area at the northeasterly corner of the block along Equestrian Way is planned to be complete with a circular planting bed, park benches, and a walkway to the private access, which will complement the adjacent landscape features to be installed on the block directly east. As previously stated, the proposed apartment is a permitted use in the existing bylaw, and site-specific provisions are being requested to adhere to changes in market needs. At a high level, the provisions being requested are as follows. The maximum front yard setback is proposed at 7.25 meters from Equestrian Way as opposed to 4.5 meters, which specifically addresses the apartment use to accommodate the daylight triangle at the intersection of Equestrian Way and Speedsville, which will also provide additional landscaping abutting the streets. In regards to height, the proposed development is maintaining the maximum requirement of 4 stories at the street line. However, working with the grading on the site, this height requirement does not include any partially exposed parking structure. The required minimum gross floor area per unit is 50 square meters. The proposed amendment is for 43 square meters, so that it aligns with the interior building code and reflects market design needs. The minimum private amenity area of 4 square meters, as opposed to the required 20 square meters, is proposed in order to recognize the built form of the apartment building, as the private amenity spaces refer to the porches, balconies, and reflects previous approvals and townhouse blocks constructed within the community. The maximum density proposed is 200 units per hectare, whereas 75 units per hectare is permitted to provide gentle intensification by providing a mix of dwelling unit sizes and tenures within the overall community. Higher density residential is also supported along Speedsville Road. Parking ratio of 1.15 as opposed to 1.25 has been requested. Paradigm Transportation Solutions conducted a parking study and concluded that the parking reduction can be supported. Next slide, please. The proposed apartment building is to be constructed near the street edge. Ground-oriented residential uses would address the street with enhanced facades, including private amenity areas at grade and on balconies providing continuous view sheds, and promote interaction with the Main Street nature of Equestrian Way that will animate the streetscape and increase eyes on the street. As previously stated, due to the grading on the site, parking is primarily located in a partially underground structure, which will partly be visible from Speedsville Road and the industrial block to the south. This development offers yet another housing choice within the overall Rivermill community and is a great addition for first-time buyers. It will contribute to an attractive, accessible, and safe environment. Next slide, please. As previously stated, New Horizon Development Limited has partnered with the owners and will be the builders of the apartment building. From left to right on the screen are just 3 of the developments completed by New Horizon. To the left is an image of Sapphire Condominiums in Stony Creek, which was completed in 2019, which is a two-building, 6-story development with a total of 433 units. Utopia Condominiums in Beamsville was completed in 2022 and is a 6-story development with 276 condo suites with a U-shaped layout featuring a central courtyard. And Vibe Communities in Burlington, which was built in 2014, is a 4-story condo containing 93 units. This development group is committed to building new attainable developments that will benefit the community and provide residents with the quality spaces and amenities to meet their current and evolving needs. Next slide, please. The proposed development provides options for a mix of housing types and tenures in the overall Rivermill community and supports regional and city objectives to plan new growth areas within the urban designated Greenfield area. We look forward to continuing to work with staff on this application. Thank you for your time this evening, and we would be happy to answer any questions you may have and listen to any feedback on the proposed development.
Thank you. Does council have any questions for the consultants? Councilor Devine.
Thank you, through the chair. Is the mic on?
Yeah.
Thank you, through the chair. Am I understanding this right, that it's zoned, this area is zoned for 75 units per hectare, and we're wanting to go to 200, is that correct? That's my understanding?
Through you, Chair, yes, that is correct. It's 75 units per hectare in the zoning bylaw, and we are proposing 200 units per hectare, which specifically relates to the apartment use and the number of units that we were proposing.
Okay, so that's almost 3 times what the what's allowed there at the moment, is that correct?
Through you, Chair, yes, that is correct.
It's a stretch, thanks.
Councilor Roberts.
Yes, thank you, Chair Mata. First question, why do you think that the developers would go to townhouses? I know that we had talked about, you had put in your proposal here to approve site-specific provisions for developments when it sounds like the entire development could change. So I'm just wondering what would be the changing factor there?
Through the chair to yourself, market conditions. Quite honestly, we've learned over the years, zoning should be flexible to allow for market condition changes. Cambridge's bylaw does permit other uses in the residential zones. So what we've done is build in the zoning regulations that we've had approved for the other townhouse blocks. But the intent is to build the apartment building.
Councilor Hamilton.
Thank you, Councilor Mehta, through you. And thank you both very much for your presentation. Just wondering, sorry, On the map, can you clarify what exactly phase 6 is planned to be? I wasn't sure. It immediately adjoins this phase, but what is it?
Thank you through you, Chair. Phase 6, which is the block directly south of this, will be one industrial building, which our Rivervale is currently working towards site plan application for that block.
Thank you. And a quick follow-up, if I may. If it's an industrial building, do we know what type of industry is going to go in there? If it's going to be loud, if it's going to emit any noise or light or vibration?
Sorry, I don't think, through the chair to yourself, I don't think that we are able to disclose that. But I can say that the noise report was updated in consideration of what's being planned when we put it in with the application. So the intent is not for it to be noisy. The noise report also, of course, took into account Ariscraft, which is further to the south, and found that everything was fine.
Okay, thank you. I have other questions, but I see there's a lineup, so I'll hold them for now.
Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your presentation as well. You didn't mention anything about transit, and I don't know. I know it's a 15-minute community that we're trying to build here, but still in all, we may need transit for other places that people may want to go. So I don't know what is currently there and what is maybe being proposed for future transit needs.
Through the chair, I believe that transit is proposed along Speedsville. I will honestly say I don't know the status of it. I believe that is one of the considerations of why we wanted the density along Speedsville.
Thank you.
Councillor Cooper.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for your presentation. The parking here and the request to reduce down to 0.15 visitor spaces per unit. You state that someone did a study saying that the parking right now is appropriate. I'm concerned that with the visitor spaces, if just one out of less than 7 of the units, so basically every 7th unit used a visitor parking for a second car, which a lot of people would have, all visitor parking would disappear. So that concerns me. How did somebody come back and state that the parking plan is appropriate or feasible?
Through the chair, there was a parking study that was done by Paradigm, and that was based on consideration of the type of units that are proposed. So these are marketed towards first-time buyer. They're smaller units, move down buyers in terms of people that may spend 6 months in Florida. Car ownership was considered. So New Horizon has built these in other places. Paradigm was able to survey what their needs were, and they were comfortable that there wouldn't be a problem. I would also say that as condos, all of that would be disclosed in their purchase agreements, and they would be aware of what the parking requirements were.
So follow up. So with these 465 units, if anybody had 2 cars, couple trying to make ends meet with 2 jobs, this proposal will be of no use to them.
Through the chair to yourself, I believe that the owner or requirement is in the bylaws 1 space per unit. It's only the visitor parking that is being reduced. So I would suggest that if the city has that regulation, that they're comfortable then that the 1 per unit is working. So.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Kimpson.
Thank you, Chair Ameta, and through you to the delegations. I have 2 questions, if I may. The first question, if I'm looking at this drawing, you had mentioned being at sort of ground level per se for some of the units. Is that correct?
Through Chair, yes, that's correct.
And so I'm looking at this and I'm seeing ground level units fairly close to Speedsville Road. It's a pretty busy road and there's been quite a number of crashes in that area lately. I'm just wondering, are these trees shown in the drawing, or is there something being put in place to sort of assure the safety of the people that are in those buildings? I know it seems a little bit of a stretch, but.
Yeah. So through the chair to yourself, very good question. We're at the zoning level, which tends to deal with land use and setbacks. Your question very much is site plan oriented, which is our next phase. And I would suggest if that's of a concern, that should be noted to staff, and that should be a consideration in the landscape and fencing plan when we do site plan approval.
Thank you. And may I ask my second question? And this question is for staff. Don't need an answer right now, but can we look at what the plans are for the widening of Speedsville Road in this particular area, just as we've had a number of development applications come forward for this area, and certainly it is quite busy. If we may, please. Thank you.
Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair Mehta, and through you. I noticed there are a lot of units that are proposed here, and the word attainable housing came up a lot. How about affordable housing? Do you have any units that meet the definition of affordable housing in this?
Through the chair to yourself, not at this time. It is something that the ownership group is considering in terms of rental housing as part of phase 4. That's something that we're dealing with Rachel, with Ms. Green, sorry.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Something with, if not affordable housing, then a contribution to the Affordable Housing Reserve. I always think that's important. But I have a follow-up question, if I may. Thank you. I noticed there are 152 spaces for bikes, which is great. Are there any bike paths throughout all the different phases on which these bikes will be used, or will they be basically confined to Equestrian Way and Speedsville, which are quite busy?
So through the chair to yourself, and thank you for allowing us both to answer. I have been working on this project since 1998. So I have a lot of legacy knowledge on it. And Diana, as I said, does the day-to-day. In phase 1 and phase 2, there's 1.7 kilometer bike lanes that are incorporated into the roadways. And it is something that is part of phase 3 and considered for phase 4 and 5 as well.
That's great. Thank you.
Councillor Robert.
Thank you, Chair Mehta, through you. My question is probably partially site plan, but I think also partially zoning, since we're looking for a reduction of the amenity area to just 4 meters squared. So I'm curious, you had mentioned other amenities that would be included. Is there any way you can speak to any of those, please? Because 4 meters is pretty tiny.
I'm going to let Diana, through the chair, answer that. I asked the same question yesterday. She's got all the numbers for you.
Through you, Chair. Thank you. So the 4 square meters is only required for just the apartment use to each individual unit. So as a breakdown of the units, just so you're aware, there's 63 studio apartments proposed, 389 1-bedroom units, and 13 2-bedroom units. And these will range, for instance, the studio apartment would be about 35 to 42 square meters. 1-bedroom would be about 43 to 53 square meters, and a 2-bedroom would be 53 to 78, give or take. So in regards to the size of the units, proposed for each unit would be like a balcony or a porch or a patio type. So, and other developments, specifically with the townhouses as well that were constructed in other blocks, the 4 square meters does show to work. And I don't know if do you have anything to add, Terry?
I do. So respectfully, through the chair, that doesn't include all of the shared amenity green space. And we had that on the plan, as well as there's indoor gym and amenity space as well. So that number 4 is the private portion, their balcony. It doesn't include all of the rest of the that's available to all of the owners.
Councillor Earnshaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is a follow-up to the questions that were posed by both Councillor Cooper and Councillor Hamilton, and it has to do with the bicycle parking, 152 units, I think, of bicycle parking. I might add that I bicycled through there into the phases that are complete, and the bicycle lanes are very accommodating. So congratulations on that. What I wanted to know, not having seen the parking study, is whether the 152 bicycle parking spaces play into the number of vehicle parking spaces. Is there a correlation there at all or not?
Through you, Chair, no, there's separate calculations.
Okay.
The bicycle parking. It's in addition to the other parking requirements.
All right, thank you.
Councillor Cooper?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just want to see if there's a little oversight in the numbers here. On the application slide here, it says the maximum gross floor area. It gives the existing for townhouses and apartments, and then for the proposed, there's just one number. What does that apply to? Is that for the apartments and the townhomes is missing? Or would that be for both?
Through the chair, I'm not sure what slide you're referring to.
The application, that's all I could say. That one.
Oh,
Page 8.
in the report.
Yeah, sorry.
Apologies.
I apologize.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah.
Maximum gross floor area.
Oh, the gross, I'm so sorry. And I don't have the right glasses on. Respectfully, through the chair, can you ask me that question again, please?
What's that?
So sorry.
Oh, okay. Okay, I get you. All right, let's make this clear. We've got for the maximum gross floor area, we have what's existing for the townhouses, 70 square meters. For the apartments, 50 square meters, and then the proposed, it says 43. And that's the only number.
Through the chair, yes, that is meant just for the apartments.
Okay.
And that does reflect the OBC requirement now, which has changed since the bylaw was written.
So if you were to do the townhomes, there would be a different number.
Yeah, they are as per.
That's one heck of a reduction if that's a
Yes,
townhome.
no, we're good with that. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Thanks.
Councillor Hamilton?
Thank you, Chairman, and through you. There are parking spaces, obviously, some visitors, some residential. Are any of them prepared for electric vehicles, or will there be charging stations?
Through you, Chair, that question's been brought up quite a few times on different blocks. So as of right now, I don't believe there is. I can go back and inquire about that, but as of right now, it has not been included.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Kimson?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Question for the current delegation. For the apartment buildings that we see here, will any of them have elevators in them?
Through you, Chair, yes, sorry, yes, they will.
Okay, and is that for all the units?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank
Through you,
you.
Chair, sorry.
Thank you very much. And a question, I believe this might be for staff. Could you explain to us how it works? Right now, we're looking at a proposed development. We're looking at a concept plan with the apartment buildings on it. However, the request is to also allow townhomes or something else depending on the market. How does it work? How does it work for us if all of a sudden there's a switch?
Yeah, so the original zoning bylaw, which was approved 10 years ago, contemplated to have both apartments and or townhouses. And that works across all of our zoning. So an RM3 zone in the zoning bylaw permits anything from a duplex all the way to an apartment building. So each one of those uses has specific zoning requirements. Each of them have different setbacks, different open landscaping, different amenity areas. And that's why there are so many to go through tonight, because they're contemplating if there's an apartment building, these are going to be all of the regulations that apply. And when we get to site plan, they will have to meet all of those regulations. And same as if they end up going to a townhouse, all of the site development standards that they're requesting through this application will have to be met. So regardless of which development form they go through, and it might not end up being the ultimate concept that you've seen here tonight. It is just a concept. So things could change from site plan, but they will still need to maintain all of the development standards that they're requesting.
Okay, thank you. So if we look at this here, it could very well switch to looking at potentially 80% back-to-back or stacked townhomes.
Yeah, and then if you're looking for what that might look like, if you look on the site that's adjacent to this, which was approved in 2021, I believe, it would probably look very similar to that because the provisions are essentially the same.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And I would just add too, from my own observations, the townhouse I used to live in about a year ago was zoned RM3 as well. And the apartment block down the street had the same zoning as well, but it all complied with that zoning, of course. And in parts of Cambridge, we also have situations where you have single family homes, which also have the zoning for semis. So each one's allowed, but they chose detached homes in that particular case. So the flexible zoning is becoming common, not just in Cambridge, but all over, depending on how the market goes at the time. Councillor Devine.
Yes, thank you through the chair. Question, go to page, page is that 9, go to page 9 on the application, please. Just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. Okay. Private amenity area. Townhouse, what's required is 30 square meters. Apartment is 20 square meters. Okay, you're requesting a reduction on the townhouse from 35 meters to 25 square meters from amenity area. In apartments, you're looking to go from 20 square meters to 4 square meters. Is that correct?
Through the chair to you, yes, that's correct, Councillor Devine.
Okay, we'll go down to the next one. Maximum lot coverage. Townhouse is normally 40%. So the linear and cluster townhomes, you'd like 60%. And on the back-to-backs, you'd like 80% from 40. Is that correct?
Through the chair to you, yes.
Just so I'm understanding this. That one's I'm not worried about. But we've already talked about that. Okay, thank you. It's quite a reduction.
Councillor Roberts.
Yes, thank you, Chair Meta. Not to beat a dead horse, but I do have a question about the parking. So I noticed that in your 465 units, which is 1 space per unit, you've included your 11 barrier-free spaces in that calculation. So I feel that that could be problematic if you don't have, say, 11 units requiring the barrier-free spaces. You actually are only really giving 454, I guess, spots that would be usable by anyone. So I've seen other developments where they've included the barrier-free spaces on top of. So the 4% or whatever percent you folks decide to go with, 4% is the rules, but some other municipalities have gone with greater percentages, which is also helpful. But having that over and above the requirements is, I would think, best practice, just to ensure that everyone has at least access to 1 space at the minimum.
Through the chair, we are more than willing. We will take a look at that. As Rachel indicated, this is a concept, and we will go back and have a look at that.
So I see no further questions from the committee. Councillor Cooper, I caught you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Robert just said you don't want to beat that horse. I'm going to beat that horse, and this is more to council I'm speaking to here and the developer. I'm going to beat this horse repeatedly. I don't want to see barriers to housing. You've heard me say this before, and I'm repeatedly seeing this. We're repeatedly seeing this. Frankly, I don't care what any studies or developers say about whether this is feasible. It's frankly, yeah, it's feasible to get people in there when it only is usable by what accounts to about 11% of our population. And it's very easy to also say that, oh, this is starter home. This is all it's for. Well, that'd be great if that implied that a lot of what comes across our desk regarding proposals was not that. Because then that would imply there's going to be extra parking for them that would not be a barrier. But we're not seeing that. In the months that I've been here, other than the occasional little 4 or 6 unit townhome where they use driveways. The fact is that we've dealt with thousands of units as a whole. I could tell you someone that maybe is a couple that both got a car to make ends meet. Someone's living with a kid that can't afford their own housing. The fact is, every single one of the proposals that come across us would be of no use to them. It would be a barrier to housing. Finances are not just a barrier, it's the practicality of it. And we're seeing this in every single proposal with different excuses about reducing carbon footprint. It's going to be on a transit line. It's a starter home. It's this, it's that. But the fact is, again, my scenario, myself, partner, car each to make ends meet, not one would work for me. Couldn't even apply. And this is going to keep happening as long as we okay this stuff. I'm tired of seeing barriers like this. So yes, I'm going to beat this horse regularly. I'm going to do it every time. I'm just letting you know that. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you have a question? I just wanted to make sure. But we will allow comments after, so you can speak until the cows come home. All right, so I see no further questions. I do have a couple myself. Some have already been asked. One question I have is, and you may have mentioned it, I may have missed it, and I apologize if I did. What are going to be the approximate sizes of the units for the apartments? Do we know at this point, like square footage roughly and number of bedrooms?
I have square meters if that's okay. Okay, through you. So the studio apartments right now account for 63. 1 bedroom accounts for 389, and the 2 bedroom is 13 for a total of 465. The studio apartments will range from 35 to 42 square meters. The 1 bedroom will range from 43 to 53, and 2 bedrooms will range from 53 to 78 square meters.
Okay, thank you. My next question is, what kind of demographics do we expect when move into the apartment building? And what I mean by that is, like looking at your other projects, did you get a lot of seniors or like first-time buyer families or young professionals? Like how many people per unit roughly could we be looking at, do you think?
Through you, Chair, for this specific development, it is catered to first-time buyers, single couples, or a young family with like kids, because there are some 2-bedroom units. The townhouses, the blocks that have been approved and constructed and built on, there have been young families. There's been a range of different demographics that have moved in there.
And just to add to that, for this apartment building, New Horizons, Mr. Pakin advised me this morning. I asked him for his survey on the other projects that he's done. He's saying the majority are first-time buyer, as well as what I mentioned, kind of the snowbird who goes south for 6 months and then wants to have a place here. That's the majority of them.
Thank you. And those are my questions. Appreciate it. Thanks. So we have no pre-registered delegations for this meeting. I will now call for any members of the public who would like to speak to agenda item 5.1, report 23-193 CD public meeting, part of 1065 Speedsville Road zoning bylaw amendment, River Mill Development Corp. I guess there's no members of the public present, so we will be taking a break and to see who will call in. So like 2 minutes or 3-minute break, we'll come back. Well, welcome back, everyone. We have not received requests to speak to this item during our first short break. We will now move to a longer break to give anyone watching the opportunity to let us know in person, by text or by email, to speak to report 23-193 CD public meeting, part of 1065 Speedsville Road zoning bylaw amendment, River Mill Development Corp. Again, I remind viewers, if you are following along virtually, please contact clerks@cambridge.ca or text 226-218-1184 if you wish to speak to an item. If you are with us in person, please feel free to raise your hand. We are now going to have a 4-minute recess for additional requests to speak. We'll be back then. Thanks. Well, welcome back, everyone. We have received one delegate requesting to speak to this public meeting during our short break. I ask for your patience as we contact each delegate. William Morris.
Just say it'll be a minute.
It'll be just a minute. We're just going to give him a call.
He's in the room. He's in the room. You can come, you can talk about it.
Hi, William. This is Councillor Mehta. Are you here?
Yes, thank you.
Hi, thank you for coming to our public meeting. Please note that you have 5 minutes to address council. You will hear a chime when there is 1 minute left, and I ask that you abide by the following. Ensure that your remarks relate directly to the agenda item, that your remarks are respectful, and that you refrain from asking questions of council. And please begin.
Thank you, Chair. So I just wanted to highlight that just for others that might be observing online, your stream kicked off, the others that were watching, and it's now part 2. So there may be some people that would have liked to have participated, but might not be able to on the live stream. But I would like to speak to the cycling aspect. So in the concept, the proposal is for 152 bicycle parking spaces, and I understand that the city is working towards having reduction of greenhouse gases and so on. The question that I would like to, sorry, not the question, the statement that I'd like to make would be for the proponents in their concept to work with the city to improve the infrastructure within that area. Speedsville Road is in dire need of repair. Crumbling shoulders, transport trucks, heavy traffic with Toyota peak traffic and so on. And quite honestly, it would be a good question for anybody that is one of the proponents of this subdivision. Have they ever tried to ride a bicycle down Speedsville Road? Not the safest thing. Now, I'm remiss with Speedsville Road if it's a regional road or a city road. And I just think that it's really important here for this concept to be in concert with the city and whoever would be doing any road improvements to make some changes there. 152 bicycle parking spaces, that's great, but are people able to use cycling infrastructure, cycling lanes to be able to go north and south? And heaven forbid, if they decide to venture up onto Maple Grove Road on their bicycles, it's a bit of a safety problem as well. There's no infrastructure for cycling in that neighborhood. And I think that it's high time that if we're going to be doing these subdivisions in different areas, that we have the plan to have safe cycling for the individuals that would be residing in these dwellings. I noted that members of council were making some wonderful comments about the development. It's great. The area is built up for that. It'll sustain itself. But I do concur with, I believe it was Councillor Cooper, and I hear the verbiage about affordable housing, and it's a misnomer. It is unaffordable. We need to have attainable housing, and we need to have, heaven forbid, people will jump up and down, say geared to income housing, because as Councillor Cooper had highlighted, there are many people that are struggling these days, and we're on the precipice of a recession. And I really think it's high point in time for proponents of developments across the greater city that they consider having a proponent of geared to income housing. We can't have affordable housing. Market rent is too expensive. Mortgages and mortgage rates are going up. And I just think that it's really important that these proponents in subsequent concept that comes back towards council, that a couple of things. One, work with the city and help improve the cycling infrastructure in that area. 2, have geared to income housing built into these areas. It's very important that the public that are moving to this area have the ability to afford. It is unaffordable, the housing. I just heard my bell, so I will wrap it up at that, and I appreciate the time to delegate to you this evening.
Well, thank you for your presentation. Are there any questions, members of council? Seeing none, thank you. A reminder to anyone interested in report 23-193 CD public meeting, part of 1065 Speedsville Road zoning bylaw amendment, River Mill Development Corporation may submit written correspondence on the matter for inclusion in the minutes if they are unable to delegate. I have received confirmation from staff that there are no further requests to speak. Okay, good. So before putting the motion on the floor, does council have any questions for staff? Councilor Robert.
Thank you, Chair Meta. Hi, Rachel. Thank you. So this is the first time I've seen one of these come where, and I know you said that this is something that is in the bylaw where it could come back as an entirely different project. How often do we see things like that happen? Is that common?
Well, it's this type of zoning is especially common for subdivisions because at the time of subdivision, you don't necessarily what's going to be on block by block. You might know that it's going to be a multiple residential block that accommodates higher density, but you might not know the form yet. And so in subdivisions, it is fairly common to see multiple different forms of development be permitted on a site. And when it comes to actually develop that site, then you will see the refinements come through like this, or they might be as minor variances. In this case, it's a zoning change.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like in terms of sort of the demographic that the developer that these folks were saying would be occupying this. Yes, an apartment, it would make sense for them, but stacked townhouse, probably not so much, young families and potentially seniors. I think those were sort of the two primary groups that you were speaking to. So it just makes me slightly concerned to see that those are sort of and obviously you had stated that apartments were the ones that they were hoping to go with, but if the market doesn't allow for that to happen and we do go to the stacked townhouse, I'm just concerned with the viability of that for a number of the folks that you were saying that these would be best built for. So that's all. Thank you.
Councilor Hamilton.
Thank you, Chairman, and through you. Hi, Rachel.
Hello.
I'm just wondering if you can comment. I think it was Councillor Reid that brought this up earlier, but what is public transportation actually like in this area? Because it seems like a lot of these residents would depend on using it. So
I am going to have to follow up. I know that in the development to the north, there is going to be a bus shelter, I think, but required on Maple Grove. So I'm going to have to see what the requirements are on Speedsville. And speaking to a previous comment, Speedsville Road is currently with the city, but in speaking with transportation staff, my understanding is that it is going to be uploaded to the region. So I don't believe the city has started any studies for upgrades along that road, but he was going to check in with the region to see what the plans are, if there currently are any. So I know that, yes, there is transit along Maple Grove, but we'll have to look at what's actually proposed along Speedsville and internal to the site.
And one quick follow-up question, if I may. You mentioned Speedsville roads and transportation on Maple Grove. Are there currently any sidewalks on Speedsville, or are there any city plans? You mentioned no, because it might be regional.
There's currently no sidewalks. I'd have to confirm with transportation, but I don't believe, because we are planning on having it upgraded to the region, I don't know if it's been looked at yet.
All right, thank you.
I see no further questions. Thank you. We will now move forward with placing this item on the floor. I remind council that this item is to be referred back to staff for a subsequent report and recommendation. Councilor Reid, you have the motion. Would you like the clerk to read the motion on your behalf? Yes, please. Yeah, we will do that.
Moved by Councilor Reid, seconded by Councilor Hamilton. Report 23-193 CD, public meeting, 1065 Speedsville Road, zoning bylaw amendment, River Mill Development Corp. be received, and that application RO1/23 for part of 1065 Speedsville Road be referred back to staff for a subsequent report and staff recommendation.
Thank you. Are there any further questions, members of council? Councillor Devine?
Yes, I have a number of concerns. We're putting 13 pounds in a 4-pound bag here, in my opinion. The density is very high. Very, very high. And if you take a look at the request for variances, gone from 75 units per hectare to 200 units per hectare. Yeah, on page 9. We're going from private amenity area from for townhouses from 25 square meters to, I'm sorry, 35 to 25 square meters. I have trouble with that, but where I have a big issue is the apartments, you're going from 20 square meters of private amenity area to 4, from 20 to 4. And the maximum lot coverage going from 40% to 60 and 80. I can't support this. I cannot support this. We want to go back to drawing board and make some changes or make it a little more livable for people. I could be in, but I cannot support this at all. Thank you.
Councillor Hamilton?
Thank you, Chair Mehta, and through you. I guess this application, I'm finding it's a bit of a mixed bag. On the one hand, we have a dire need for housing, and this does provide a variety of housing options from studios to multiple bedroom units. So it can cater to a wide variety of citizens, which I think is important. I do share Councillor Devine's concern about the density. I think something like this tends to be geared more towards the center of a city. And right here, I'm concerned to see how it fits into Speedsville and Equestrian Way. And that's why I'd like staff, when this comes back, if it does, to have an outline as to what that general area will look like, possibly in 5 or 10 years. No one has a crystal ball, but if you take something that is geared to the density of, let's say, a more urbanized area and put it out on what's essentially an old industrial plot, I don't know if that jigsaw will fit together properly. I'm not going to repeat Councillor Cooper's epic expression. Parking. I do think that when you have one space per unit and there are 465 units, odds are there's going to be a disconnect because some units will need 2 cars. I think that's very true. But on the other hand, I do want to point out that lots of houses do have no cars or 1 car. Even in my own area, it's kind of an old subdivision, and we have seniors that have 1 car. We have single persons that have 1 car. We have young couples that have 1 car. My partner and I had 1 car for many years before we had kids, but it's true, our circumstances changed and then we needed 2 cars. So although I do think that more parking is needed, I do want to point out that some households just need 1 car, sometimes none. In terms of the costs, I would like to see some type of affordable housing, some type of rent geared to income, some type of contribution to the affordable housing reserve. Lots of developers are incorporating inclusionary zoning into their developments, which I think is positive, and I'd like to see that here. And of course, to bring back parking, if there are any possibility to put in spaces for electric vehicles. So by 2035, 100% of the cars sold in Canada will be electric. So if this is only going to be completed in a few years, it makes sense to start building that future today. And that concludes my comments for now. I think it's a mixed bag, so I'm eager to see what the developer can do to alleviate a lot of the concerns I think that are shared around the horseshoe.
I'm just going to allow a little bit more time to hear if there are any more comments, because this is the best time to do it while we're ahead on the application, rather than have the comments come later, right? So that staff can review everything. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I've been looking at this ever since I was elected in 2010. That's how long that this has been going on. And there have been many phases to this. And what we're really trying to do here is to build a 15-minute city area there within this whole one. It's quite a vast development. And as you said, there are many phases to this development. I hear the concerns that people have, and I feel very comfortable that the people, our developers will take those concerns seriously, and they will look at them, as well as staff will look at them seriously and see what can be done in order to make this a very viable area for people who want to live there. Change is going to be coming to that area. We know there'll be change to Speedsville Road, there'll be change to Maple Grove Road. I'm not sure the timelines of when those things will happen, but they will happen. And that will make a big difference to people who choose to live in that area. And I'm really hoping that this whole development along Maple Grove and along Speedsville will come to fruition, and that we will have a really good example of a 15-minute community where there are schools, where there are banks, where there are grocery stores, and everything is within reach of people, so they don't need to use their car, so that they can use their bicycle, or they can roll, or they can walk to the areas that they need and have their needs fulfilled, without using a car. We're trying very hard to change some of our habits of using a car for everything. And it's very difficult, and it's very hard for us to change. But this is an area that I think that we are definitely building it with that in mind, that we do want to have this as a 15-minute community. And so I'm looking forward very much to what the developer is going to bring back to us after they've heard all of the comments here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kempson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Certainly, there have been a number of good comments that have been shared this evening. And I do echo Councillor Reid in looking forward to what the developer comes back with this. I'd like to hear more from staff and the developer with regard to, what is going to be done and what maybe some of the timelines will be on the subsequent phases, what services will be put in place to try and make this particular community less isolated than it is now. I had a moment to look at the Grand River Transit website, and the closest bus stop to this area is at the corner of Maple Grove and Speedsville Road. So that's still a fair distance away from this development, as well as someone would be walking along the side of a road without sidewalks. So that's something that has to go back to the to staff, if not here, but at the region, to look at how we're going to be able to, ensure that this community is going to be safe and that it's going to be equitable for everyone, and that people aren't isolated, sort of within this little area, not having parking for their vehicles or not having access to transit. So really looking forward to how this comes back and looking at what the next steps might be. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper.
Thanks, Chair Meta. The idea of the 15-minute community, that's nice. It's wonderful that we can, a lot of things will be closer to our homes. That would reduce the amount of times that we could use personal transportation, the cars. But the fact is, people will still be working outside of this 15-minute community. They're still going to be working in Guelph. They're going to be working in Kitchener, working in Waterloo. They're going to be visiting relatives further away. They're going to be using them. Yes, maybe the 15-minute neighborhood might stop the need to use it quite as often. We can go on walks, we can go on bike rides a little more. But the idea that we're suddenly just going to drop our cars, get rid of them, and get rid of our own freedom and isolate ourselves to our 15 minutes is a pipe dream. Thank you.
I see no further comments. I just want to thank everyone for the good job on the application for us to review, and my comments would be that I want to keep in mind the affordability, like affordable housing. You know, if we could get some units on site or a contribution to the fund. Urban design's a priority of mine, and the developer has done a great job with that, but this is like a gateway to the city, and I would encourage some stonework on the buildings potentially. And green space, I want to also keep that in mind, that we ensure that there's adequate green space on site. And I do have some concerns about parking. I also realize as well that a lot of the demographics that move into apartments, they have fewer cars, but you still get families from time to time. So I do want to be able to monitor that, especially since this is on the outskirts of the city more, well, though it might be more in the middle of the city eventually as the area builds up. But I want to be mindful just because it's not on the rapid transit route. So I want us to review that during the process as well. So those would be my comments. Now we're going to call the vote on this.
And opening voting. And closing voting. And that carries 7-1.
Thank you. We will now move on to the motion to receive. Councillor Devine, you've got the motion. Can you please read it?
Motion to receive, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Earnshaw. Recommendation that all presentations and correspondence from the April 4th, 2023 planning statutory public meeting committee meeting be received.
Thank you, Councillor Devine. Does council have any comments or any questions? I will ask the clerk to call the vote.
Opening voting. Closing voting. And that carries unanimously.
Thank you. And I would also just like to say I declare the statutory public meeting officially over. I like to do that at the end of each item. So I'm just doing that now. Probably not necessary, but I want to be a little bit formal. So we have reached the end of our meeting. Councillor Kempson, you've got the motion to adjourn. Can you please read it?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Cooper. Recommendation that the Planning Statutory Public Meeting Committee does now adjourn at 7:55 p.m.
Thank you. We'll call the vote.
Opening voting. Closing voting. And that carries unanimously.
Well, thank you to all staff, presenters, and delegates for taking the time to contribute your thoughts during our meeting. And this meeting is adjourned. Good night, everyone.